What if D.O.C. never got into that car accident? What if Ice Cube didn't leave NWA? What if the game never leaves G Unit? What if Teddy Riley never moves to Virginia? What if we got that J. Cole and Kendrick album? What if the RZA would have never had that flood? How would the hip hop world sound today? Welcome to Hip Hop What Ifs, the podcast where we dive into the biggest what could have beens in hip hop history. From iconic album delays to game-changing partnerships that never happened, we reimagine the culture we love and explore its alternative paths. And you are now at Hip Hop What Ifs. Welcome back to Hip Hop What Ifs. Me and 12 Kyle, as we explore everything of what if in hip hop from the nice spectrum of everything that has been going on within this great culture. Hey man, Kyle, we are over 100 subs, man, for one episode, man.
That's great, man. I'm glad to hear. Glad everybody's tapping in. Glad everybody's liking what they hear. We got more coming, so stay tuned.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody listening and checking us out. So this episode is about the D.O.C. So this one is an interesting one because this one, I guess this really, I want to say it really, there's a differentiated line between, because I'm like I'm at the beginning of millennial, almost Generation X. They call us Xennials. I guess it's year from 79 to 82, where we are basically Generation X, but we they messed up. They just threw these dates in here, and it was like, well, damn, we fucked up. So Xennial is what they call us. So we're in between. Okay. So if you weren't around in 1989, 1990, 1991, or did not even have a reference to it, this guy we're going to discuss today, the D.O.C., he was and then before I jump out the windows, Kyle, you was in the trenches at this time. Right. I was a young buck and almost in middle school. Was D.O.C. on the track to be better than Ice Cube at the time? Like in that time, at that time period, were people like, yo, I'm messing with D.O.C. more than Cube?
Man, listen, that's a great question. I don't know if he was on the track to be as big as Cube, but he was a rising star in hip hop. And the cool part about it was he was on the same team as Ice Cube. So, you know, that basically that group that they had compiled of NWA plus the D.O.C. was incredible, man. But I mean, like from his writing skills to his emceeing, and then he had a voice, and we'll talk about it. I mean, his voice, he even described it himself as having the golden voice. And he had a voice that when he rapped, his raps really pierced your ears and pierced the stereos that you listen to. Man, the D.O.C. was incredible, man. I even to this day, at least 2 or 3 times a month, I still listen to that album. No one could do it better. No, I mean, like it is a phenomenal album. There might be one bad track on the album, which we can talk about later. But yeah, the D.O.C., man, he was hotter than hot then. Because I mean, he was somebody who, like, at first I thought he was from Compton because everybody else he was rolling with was in the group was from Compton or from LA. And then I found out later that he was from Texas. But yeah, the D.O.C., man, this dude was definitely the next one to blow out of that crew.
Yeah, and let's set the table a little bit. So D.O.C. is a member of Ruthless Records. He also was a part of, technically, low key, and this is something I was trying to research and find out. He's on the NWA and the Posse album.
Yes. Which was my first introduction to NWA. It was NWA and the Posse. And I didn't know none of these guys. And then all of a sudden, you the more and more you listen to the tape, you got introduced to who was who. Because keep in mind, like when I heard that tape, and I want to say that tape was, I think 87. 86, 87. Like,
it's 87. It's November 87.
Yeah, okay. So it's late 87 because Eazy-E album comes out in 88 and so does Straight Outta Compton. But like there's no point of reference because you got to remember, kids, there was no internet, right? So, and I was a kid growing up in Florence, South Carolina. We didn't even have exposure to a lot of the stuff. So what was interesting was one of my homeboys, shout out to my boy Jay Fresh. Jay Fresh found the NWA and the Posse tape. He found it he went to the record store. Shout out to record stores. He went
Hold
to
on, what?
Yes. He went to a record store in our hometown of Florence, South Carolina, and there was a bin. And in the bin, it was just some tapes. And he saw the cover of the tape. And some black dudes just hanging out. They on like on the stoop or whatever. I mean, outside this building. And he just looked at the cover and it was $3.99. He paid for the tape, and the rest was history. He put me on to them.
When did he like? So when did he see that? Like around what time period? This was it 87?
Yeah, this was 87. He bought the tape, I want to say maybe about a month after it came out. So if it wasn't 87, it was early 88. And I just remember I went
on a whim. He just went on a whim and just bought.
Well, you know what it is, man. Like where we grew up, it wasn't a lot of stuff going on. So one of the things that we used to do, particularly as kids, because by this time we're getting into high school, we start driving cars and stuff like that. And so like one of our favorite pastimes, man, was just to go to the record store. Like me and him would go to the record store. And now keep in mind, we ain't had no money. You might go to the record store.
Look at who it was.
Exactly. You might go to the record store with maybe $10. You know what I'm saying? So I might go there with $10. So if I go there with $10, I got to be very selective about what I can get, because I can either get the cassette singles, I maybe can get a couple of those, or I can get somebody's tape. But if you buy somebody's tape, that tape better be smoking. So because you're in. And that was another thing as us as hip hop fans, was that we were totally invested in the music that we purchased because you spent your money. You know what I'm saying? Again, we were kids, so we spent a lot of time in the record stores, and we would spend hours in the record store. He just happened to go one day. I wasn't with him, but he bought the tape, and he's like, "Man, I got something I want you to hear." And so he played it, and I was like, "Man, yo, who is this?" Because even the West Coast rappers that we had heard before, they didn't sound like this. And Ice Cube and D.O.C. stood out on that NWA and the Posse tape.
So I'm gonna trip you out. Guess who else was? So there's two other people on this album that had seminal careers that were on this album.
Outside
not an NWA at all. What, like I'm just realizing this now from reading this.
Okay. Man.
So one of them had a big joint. One had a bigger joint first. Both of them were smooth songs. One was like, it was kind of like, it's a term for having sex that was named from this guy, one of the guy's songs. That was a name that was at least 5 years that we used it for having sex.
And I'm not gonna look it up. Damn.
What do we say? Like, man, we was
Splack.
No. This early 90s.
I'm thinking about old Southern terms, Splack.
So okay, on the episode of Martin, remember episode of Martin? Because you don't know, because you're a Martin fan. When they had the fight party, and Tommy was messing with Cole's girl in the bedroom. And he caught him because he went in there to go get something. And he came out, he's like, Gina, they was in there. They was in there. Yes.
Wow.
Candyman was in NWA and the Posse.
Now that I did not know.
There's one more person. So he redid the Denise Williams song and flipped it. And he also had Ass Gas and what was the other thing? It was Ass Gas or something though. He redid Denise Williams song Free. But it was called The Most Beautiful MC in the World.
Oh, you gotta tell me that. I don't know.
KD.
Wow, for real?
KD is in NWA and the Posse.
Wow, I had no idea.
Dude, yeah.
30 something, almost 40 years later. Wow.
That's crazy. So when I was in the research, I was like, hold on, KD and Candyman was in
not Kevin Durant, kids, not Kevin Durant.
No, yeah, KD is, he had one song, Most Beautiful, and then he also has the song for all you kids that may have if you guys remember the movie in Friday, where he's sitting there drinking the Kool-Aid. He's like, it's called Ass Gas and what is the name of that song? It's Ass Gas and something like that. Ass Gas and Cash is the name of the album, and the name of the song too. And it's in Friday, where Smokey is sitting there drinking the Kool-Aid while he's high, trying to eat and stuff. That's the KD song that's playing behind that.
Okay.
His big song was but his biggest song was the freshest MC in the world. That was the biggest song. And then he also had that song Hidden Corners too. Or whatnot. So, but those are all in the group. So D.O.C. in that group as well. D.O.C. he's a writer as well with Cube on Straight Outta Compton, but is he credited? Is one of my questions.
I don't think he's credited like how he probably should, because I'm almost certain that as far as Eazy-E's rhymes, either Cube or D.O.C. wrote them. And I think if you listen long enough and you get the cadences and stuff like that, you can kind of tell which ones Eazy wrote. I mean, which ones Ice Cube wrote and which ones the D.O.C. wrote. I don't think he wrote for Ren. I think Ren wrote his own rhymes. And again, this is something big because at this time we're talking about 87, 88. I mean, like nobody could write your rhymes. Like you would never be respected as an MC if somebody else wrote your rhymes. That's why I'm still mind boggled that, a certain rapper who has dominated the game for so long admitted to having ghostwriters and everybody was cool with it. But that's another story for another day. No shade. But yeah, it's so yeah, I'm almost certain that he wrote for exclusively for Eazy-E and probably Dre. I don't know that Dre really wrote a lot. Obviously Dre was on the production side. I don't think so. I don't think so.
And don't even say that he writes.
Yeah, I don't think Dre writes. He might write something here or there, but when somebody's writing, whoever Dre is rhyming with probably wrote his rhymes. I just kind of take that. Yeah, I mean, if he rhymed with Snoop, Snoop wrote it. So it is what it is. But yeah, that was something back in the day. Like nobody else could write your rhyme. So, but Eazy-E wasn't. If you saw the movie Straight Outta Compton, that's probably closer to being accurate than anything else. Like Eazy-E was not a MC. He was the front man. He was the gangster. He was the guy who put him on. But yeah, the D.O.C. was an incredible writer, and I don't think he got the credit he probably deserved. But he also knew at that particular time his time was coming.
He is accredited.
Okay, he is okay. Good.
He's credited on, just for the listeners. He's credited on Straight Outta Compton. Parental discretion is advised.
He rhymed on that one,
right? So those are the only two.
Okay.
That he's credited. So if he's on, so who would he write then for? Because I thought Cube wrote Eazy's verse on that song, because only Cube, Eazy, and Ren on Straight Outta Compton.
Well, you got to remember too that in this particular time, things weren't as advanced as how things are now. So you could definitely write for somebody and ghostwrite, and they just pay you some money. I mean, he was a part of the group, so it wasn't
Biggie was big with that. Biggie was big with that.
So it was like, okay, I got you. It's no big deal.
Okay, fair enough. So D.O.C. is a part of Ruthless Records. He is getting ready to come out. And the interesting thing is, Ruthless Records, if you look at their record label, they actually dropped their artists at that time. Like there was a time, a lot of labels then, people will be signing there for 5 years, never drop, or they drop an album way after they have their little buzz that they had. They dropped him right after Straight Outta Compton.
Had to. The iron was still hot. You had to, because the iron was still hot. So that was a smart move by Jerry Heller.
You think it's Jerry Heller or Eazy-E?
That was Jerry. I think it was Jerry and Eazy. I think even if you look back and that Straight Outta Compton movie kind of painted Jerry a certain way, but Jerry Heller was a shrewd businessman, just like anybody else was. But Eazy-E was definitely a brain behind some of the moves they were making, and Eazy-E handled and really came from the street. So his way of dealing things and his way of getting stuff to people. I mean, like he was really trying to get it out there. So they were trying to push that, and you saw it in the movie. They pushed it by any means necessary. However they could sell those records, because they had the street buzz out west in California, LA particular. And once it caught on like wildfire.
So I'm looking at the discography for Ruthless real quick. 88, they dropped JJ Fad, NWA, Straight Outta Compton, and Eazy Does It, all in 88.
Yeah.
At a small boutique label at the time.
The greatest, I always say, man, it's the greatest year in hip hop, 1988. If you don't believe it,
88?
No, hands down.
More than 94?
Hands down. 94 is dope, but 94 is top heavy. If you look at the best albums from 1988, and you look at the best album. Now, this is a whole nother podcast, but it is, and I'll probably do it on the Rap Soul podcast. But no, 94 is incredible. 94 is one of the best years ever. 94 might be second, but it's top heavy. When you start getting the albums 4, 5, 6, 7, then it starts to tail off. 88 doesn't do that. Listen, you know what? And I won't stay on this because I know we got to get to something else. But I'm going to give you this. In 1988 alone, there were, I want to say, without looking at it, I want to say there were, and correct me if I'm wrong, 9 albums from 1988 that got 5 mics in the source. 9. No other year has ever done that.
Is this the posthumous
No. The original. I want to say that, you know,
because it's Brand Nubian. I know Brand Nubian technically is the first 5 mic.
You know, let me look it up because I'm sure somebody's gonna try to correct me.
Because I'm looking at 94 right now. Again, 94 is a kill. It's more than 5 in 95, 94.
I ain't talking about
behind the curtain. You got O.C. Word Life on this.
Okay, so let me go back because if you add the posthumous albums, I think it's 9. But the original, let me see.
I mean, 94, we got Illmatic, Ready to Die, Southern
top heavy. They're extremely top heavy.
Diary, UGK, Tight, Common, Resurrection, Pete Rock, CL Smooth, The Main Ingredient, Warren G, Regulate, Method Man to Cal, Diggable Planets, Blowout Cone. That's pretty heavy.
Okay.
Thug Life.
Okay, you done?
No, Debret Functified.
Okay, you're done.
No, I'm not done. Spike One, America's Nightmare. Big Mike, Something Serious, Murder Was the Case.
You're
Craig
done.
Mack, Funk the World, Arrested Development.
You're done.
Rapping Forte, I love the album. Don't fight the feeling.
I love Forte, but that's okay. You're done. So let me tell you.
And if you really, Bone, creeping on the come up too.
Straight out of Compton, NWA.
Yep.
Public Enemy. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back. That could be that's one of the greatest albums ever.
Yes.
The Great Adventures of Slick Rick.
It's one of the greatest albums ever. Yes.
Ultramagnetic MCs, Critical Beatdown.
I don't know. See, I don't know if that. I don't know, man.
You ain't heard that. You ain't heard that, D.
No, I have heard it. Come on, now. I have heard it. I'm just saying you can't put that up against.
Hold up, I ain't done. Go ahead. Eric B. and Rakim.
Yes.
Long Live the Kane, Big Daddy Kane.
That was before he got with Madonna, right?
Yeah, that was Kane's first album. Ain't No Half Stepping, Raw.
Oh yeah, no. I'm thinking in my mind 94 because
By All Means Necessary, BDP. Come on, man. These are 5 mic albums.
Okay.
Strictly Business, EPMD. Power, Ice-T. Light as a Rock, MC Light. Do you want me to keep going? Easy Does It.
I named up like 12. Keep going.
I ain't done yet. In Control Volume 1, Marley Marl. Come on, man. They had the symphony on that. Classic song.
In Control was a dope album.
Yeah.
Dope album. And then
Biz Markie going off. I mean, I can keep going. Run DMC. He's the DJ. I'm the rapper. That was the first double album. Come on, man. Stetsasonic. Kid and Play. I'm not even Salt and Pepper.
I'm not saying. Look, this is we're gonna have to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna have to have a tail of the tape, like a straight up like a verses.
In the great words of Mr. T in what was it, Rocky 3? I got a lot of mo.
No, I got a lot too though. I think 94 is
94. 94 is incredible. 94 just trails off after about 10 albums. It ain't got the staying power that 88 has. But like I said, we man, let's get back to D.O.C.
Yeah. Let's get back to D.O.C. But so D.O.C. drops. D.O.C. is already Kyle. Like D.O.C. just came out to me. I knew he was in the camp, but for me as a younger kid, was there buzz for D.O.C. as you being an older kid at the time that he was coming out? Like before, like this D.O.C. before the single. Was there buzz about him, or it was like you heard it's getting funky, and it was like, oh, he's down with Ruthless. I'm getting the tape.
Yeah, it was a buzz because like we had heard him on on Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
And then when we got word that his solo album was coming out, because again, we got this through word of mouth because there was no way to really plug, hey, and
especially then for
exactly
rap
because like you're thinking about it, like I want to say Yo MTV Raps didn't debut, I think, until like 88 or 89. So, we didn't have, other than radio, you just had word of mouth, and radio really wasn't playing rap like that heavy. So, when we got word that D.O.C. was coming out, and then I remember before the album came out, they released the cassette single of It's Funky Enough.
Okay,
man, I bought the cassette single, dog. It was crazy.
No, I know. I was talking about before when it's getting funky hit, y'all. You don't understand. It hit the radio. Like, oh my god, what is this? And we can talk about it now as we go into the album. His voice coming over that track, it's like it just cut through. Here comes the 3 to the 4. And you're like, oh my god, like who is this guy?
Yes. And what's interesting is like when you hear him rapping with that, I guess that version of patois.
Yeah.
That was, other than maybe KRS-One, you didn't hear anybody else rapping like, and this is his first single. This is his first time out, and he's giving you that. And it's like, nobody said like, nah, you can't do that. Like he was bold to even try that because what we had heard before on the NWA and the Posse tape and on Straight Outta Compton, he didn't sound anything like that. So to come out like that with your first single, and that was incredible.
Yeah, it's almost like Dre set up these beats for him. That's what the production felt like. It was almost like, hey, I've been holding a whole bunch of stuff for somebody lyrically to come in here, and not saying Cube couldn't, but you gotta remember Cube had left at this point. Everyone that is in our listening audience, these beats may have been, in theory, if Cube was like, yo, I'm dropping my solo album next, maybe these beats would have been Cube's beats. I need a lyricist on these beats.
Yeah. And they fit him. They fit him perfectly, man. And it was just like, we as fans, we were just happy. Because again, you got NWA and the Posse. Then you had Easy Does It, which was crazy. And then by the time Straight Outta Compton came out, they used to call NWA the world's most dangerous crew, and that moniker fit. Like people were literally afraid of NWA. And I tell the story all the time.
The I Only Listen to 90s Music podcast is a show for 80s babies who were 90s kids. If you were a No Limit soldier, then this is your show. If you believe that Cash Money is not an army but was a Navy, this is the show for you. If you and your friends ever tried to sing a song written by Escape, In Vogue, Shy, or Boyz II Men at a talent show during middle school, this is your show. The I Only Listen to 90s Music podcast is a bunch of 80s babies talking about all the songs and things that we loved when we were kids and teenagers. So if you went to the skating rink and you were at a lock-in, this is the show for you. If you think that Tevin Campbell was the original Prince of R&B, this is the show for you. If you don't understand the conflict between Monica and Brandy, but you're kind of on Monica's side and understand why Brandy got punched, this is the show for you. Make sure that you tune in, subscribe, click the little subscribe link. We're here. We're going to talk about all things 90s music. This is the show for you.
I've mentioned on my podcast, and it's worth mentioning here, like, I had no context, being from South Carolina, I had no context clue. So like when they said it was from Compton, I didn't know what Compton was. Like, I didn't know it was either near LA or anything, because there's no point of reference. And then when we finally started seeing videos, I was like, oh, okay, so they're from California. But like even some of the stuff that they talked about, and D.O.C. was a part of that, as far as gangs and gangbang, wasn't nobody gangbanging where I live. So, that stuff was foreign to me. So it's like,
you saw colors. That was the first time you saw gangbang.
Exactly. So what happened is, Eazy-E really became this mythical figure for us, because he was this guy that talked a lot of trash, a lot of shit. And if he said he killed somebody on a record, we just assumed that he did, because nobody else talked about killing people on record. And so behind that, and behind this crazy production, you have this super lyricist who is, like I said, blowing everybody away. And by the time the album came out in 89, man, we were hooked. I know I was hooked. I played this album to death for real.
Yeah, and for all the people that may not remember, just go put on It's Getting Funky and let it just start out.
Yeah.
Just hit you. And then this album just has so many hits on it, man. Mind Blown was my joint. Lend Me an Ear, the Doc. It's Diggy Diggy Doc. Like, and my favorite song, I think, is a sleeper. I love the Formula, dog.
Oh yeah, remember the video?
Yes, when he's doing Frankenstein.
Yeah, man.
And it was he literally was just rhyming over it. That was a simple beat. That beat was not complex.
Didn't have to be. It didn't have to be. I mean, Dre, the only song, Beautiful but Deadly, I'm with you. You could skip it, but me, when I'm listening, I normally listen to it. And I've gone back and forth with some of the homies about it. But other than that, man, I mean, like, this album is flawless. And it ends with the grand finale, which is the posse cut, which
people weren't doing that until D.O.C. did that.
Yeah, man. You had to have a posse cut of your crew. And this is the great thing about hip hop back then, was that, like, when you had a posse cut, it was just you and your crew. So it wasn't going to be NWA and Ice-T, because Ice-T wasn't in their crew. It wasn't going to be NWA and Sir Mix-a-Lot, because it wasn't in their crew. So it was just strictly for you and your crew. It wasn't really until we got into the like mid 90s where you started seeing collabs where you might have a LL and a Jay-Z, or LL and a DMX or something like that. You know, outside of that, you really, if you go back into the albums from the 80s, you ain't really see a lot of people collaborating. I mean, like, I'll give you an example. Like,
I guess the Symphony would be one, right? With everybody.
Well, they were all the same crew because that was the Juice Crew, right? But I mean, like, even hearing a song like "Burn Hollywood Burn," they were, now you got Kane, you got Chuck D, and you got Ice Cube, but the common denominator is that Cube at the time was using the Bomb Squad, which is Public Enemy's production team.
He's on the East Coast at the time.
Exactly. So he was on the East Coast a lot. So that's how you get a Kane. That's how you get a Chuck D on a song like that. But something like, the grand finale, that was just like a dope posse cut, and it was the last track on the album. And it finished up what I thought was an incredible album.
And I wonder if this is the only song Cube is on. I just wonder if this was like recorded before Cube, because America's Most came out right is
90, I think, either 90 or 91.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering if he was already leaving by the time this had already dropped.
Cube probably had a foot out the door, but if you think about it, the
America's Most is 90. It came out in 90, so you got to think he's recording this. This came out. It was recorded. They said January, March 1990.
Mm-hmm. So this comes out in 80.
You say it came out 89.
Yeah, D.O.C. album comes out in 89. So it's like Cube probably had a foot out the door. But I mean, he and D.O.C. were cool. He didn't have no issues with D.O.C. His issues with Easy and Jerry Heller. Yeah. And that was tough really to lose Ice Cube at that particular time. But I mean, they had the D.O.C. who was in their minds probably just as good as a writer. And unfortunately, he had that car accident.
So let's get into the what if territory. Okay, so this is gonna be a double thing though. So before we go into the ultimate what if with him in the car accident, or I would say, do you think they would have added D.O.C. to NWA if he did not get into the car accident? That's my first question for you.
If he did not get into the car accident,
right? Do you think that it was a setup, or do you think that he was like, dude, I'm already solo, why would I join the group?
I think if you remove the accident, let's say the accident doesn't happen, I think with Cube leaving, I think D.O.C. slides right in. I think he becomes because he was really, if you think about it, he was a de facto member of NWA. Yes. He contributed to NWA and the Posse. Yep. He contributed to Easy Does It, and he contributed to Straight Outta Compton. So he was already there. I mean, so it would have been easy for him to slide in and be a member at that particular time, because Cube was gone. So yeah, if the accident doesn't happen, he's a de facto member right there.
Does D.O.C diss Ice Cube on 100 Miles and Running?
If he's a part of the group, he's got to roll with it. But that's
niggas for life.
Yeah,
I mean, on Niggas for Life.
Niggas for Life. Yeah, I know what you meant. But I mean, like, even in that, man, it was they did what they had to do because like if you think about it, like, do you really think Ren and Ice Cube had beef? Like, I don't think Ren had any beef with Ice Cube. Again, I think his beef was with Jerry and Easy, and subsequently Easy. And if you follow the Straight Outta Compton movie, it kind of plays that way. Now, keep in mind, Straight Outta Compton was written and directed by Ice Cube and Dre, and they contributed in Easy's widow, Erica Wright. So you have to take this all with a grain of salt because it's one perspective. We never got Easy's perspective because Easy's no longer here. Rest in peace. But I think it would have played out. He would have ended up dissing him. But I mean, like, even Ren and those guys dissing him. Like, did Yellow have beef with Ice Cube? I think they probably were just upset that he left, right?
Yeah.
And then it was like, Easy was probably like, man, fuck Ice Cube. And then they had to be like that too. So that's what it was. Yeah,
because it was always interesting. Why did Dre have to say the line that was really the one that, what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Said we had 4, but we needed to drop one.
and exactly. And I mean, like,
even 5, we couldn't take one. So we had to drop one.
And I don't even think Dre and Cube had beef like that. I just don't. And to be honest, just from what I've heard, I've never been able to confirm all of this, but they said that Easy and Cube kind of made up before Easy passed. So
yeah,
I don't think it was, it was just business. And they kind of strike me as guys who were not somebody who was formulated and put together. They seemed like a unit of guys who had been together for a while. And I don't know if they came from all from the same neighborhoods, but they were cool and really, for lack of better terms, friends. So,
all right. So where does D.O.C career go if he does not get into? So for our listeners that may not know, D.O.C was drunk and ends up crashing, taking out, basically almost dying and killing himself. And he basically, his throat cannot rap anymore. He has this raspy voice now. That voice that you can hear on is getting funky. When you hear come in that brings you in, is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, maybe his energy, even for the pen, is gone. What if he does not get into this car accident?
If the D.O.C doesn't get into this car accident, everything changes. You can make a case that Ruthless stays the same. Maybe Dre doesn't leave. Maybe, just maybe, Suge that keeps Suge away, and Suge doesn't have the chance to come in and swoop.
But Suge started managing D.O.C at the time. He was his manager. Well, when he got an accident.
That part too, but I mean, like, maybe those paths never cross if D.O.C doesn't get into that accident. This might be one of the biggest what ifs in hip hop history because this guy was literally a superstar in the making. I mean, like, for those of you who are maybe a little bit younger at that particular time, or maybe weren't even around. I mean, think about it like this. If you can remember how hot Kanye West was when College Dropout came out. So just imagine College Dropout coming out and Kanye West being one of the hottest up and coming rappers and producers of all time at that particular time. And then all of a sudden he gets into an accident and he can't produce, he can't rap, he can't do anything anymore. That might sound extreme, but I'm just trying to paint a picture as to where the D.O.C was. Like, the sky was the limit for this guy. And the gift and the curse about that accident is that while we have stories as to what happened, it's kind of good that we didn't have the internet back then, because, like, we don't know how serious it was. Like, we heard that he could have died, but I mean, it's like, if we see him and it's like, okay, he looked the same, because he still looks like the D.O.C. Like, his look didn't change.
He ended up dropping an album in '95 after that.
Yeah, and even listening to that album, it was okay, but it wasn't. No one can do it better.
With it changes it up.
Yeah, his voice is his voice is one of the most distinctive voices, well, was one of the most distinctive voices in hip hop, I think. And I don't think I'm being facetious in saying it. I mean, like his voice and like somebody like Chuck D, like I said, their voices, they pierce your speaker. They pierce your speaker. So like you can hear like if you played the D.O.C. for your granny would understand every word that he's saying. You can't play all kind of hip hop for your granny.
Oh, and you can't play it for your granny because he didn't cuss on the album.
Exactly.
Like literally, y'all don't understand. There is no cuss. This is an album that did not have a parental advisory sticker on it, and that's clean album.
And that's crazy coming from that camp, considering they cussed on Eazy-E and NWA's album. So yeah, this guy, man, he would have been a superstar in hip hop. And he was just really just taking off, man. It was, like I said, it's the gift and the curse, because I don't think that people really understand how bad that accident was. I mean, of course, there's stories and stuff, but think about it. If it happened in 2025,
we didn't know everything.
We know everything. We'd have somebody have TMZ have footage of it, and somebody, oh yeah, his D.O.C.'s car is on fire, that type of stuff. So, but it was bad. It was really bad, and I remember hearing him on Dr. Dre's album, The Chronic.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, D, like when I first heard that skit and I heard his voice, I didn't know who he was. And it was like, yeah, man, it's the D.O.C. I was like,
no, it's not.
D.O.C. sound like that? Like, oh, damn, not my dude. Man, I was hurt. I mean, I was happy that he was okay, but he just didn't sound like the D.O.C. anymore. And as you guys can tell, I'm a huge fan. Again, I
understand how dope that album was and like how much it was like bumping. Like it's like he said, this is one of the biggest what ifs in hip hop, because that is a forgotten album almost in hip hop lore as well.
Not by me.
Right, no, but I'm talking about when people talk about.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah, but I literally will play that album at least 2 or 3 times a month, man, because and the great part about it is, D, when I play it, it still feels like 89. But it doesn't sound dated. So I don't think anybody that wasn't around or wasn't outside in 89, that you would hear it and be like, oh, this don't sound, because some old albums sound old. Let's just be honest. And that may mean because it's
very dated. They sound very dated.
They sound dated because you might have been dealing with an analog, and now you got all kind of high tech and AI and all kind of stuff that you can make your album sound fresh. But yeah, this album, and just like I said, who he was as an up and coming, and then he, like you said, he had the pen. So I mean, think about it.
He wrote most of Dre's stuff as well for people that know on The Chronic.
Exactly. So think about it like this, D. If he doesn't get into that accident, not only is he a rising star in the rap game, but he probably starts writing for other artists. He probably starts writing for R&B artists, because that pen can go on both sides of the music field. So I just think and I wouldn't even been surprised, man. And he was very charismatic as well. I wouldn't even been surprised if D.O.C. would have landed some small acting roles at that particular time. I'm telling you, he was that type of, like, if how like you look at an athlete and say, oh, this person's next, he or she is next. D.O.C. was definitely next.
I'm going to disagree with you just one point.
Go ahead.
I think that he would have still went to Death Row.
You think so?
Dre.
Okay.
But we never get Tupac on Death Row because D.O.C. is there.
No, I disagree with that. And the reason why I say that is because I think
Tupac was so big, you're saying?
Yeah, I think Tupac would have always ended up on Death Row. Because
so any what if situations we have, besides him not being shot at the Quad Studios and not with the rape charge, both of those are the only 2 situations where we don't have Tupac on Death Row.
Right.
I'm not speaking for you. I can see what
No. I agree 1,000%. Yeah, I think Pac was going to always end up on Death Row. I think just because Death Row Suge was the one that kind of put his arm around Pac and let him know, hey, it's going to be okay. And then he, paid to get him out, and then, Pac was working off that debt. That's why we have so much music from Pac. And I've always been very skeptical about, his posthumous work, because I don't know necessarily if Pac would have released some of that stuff once, if he were still here. But I think that's why I think Pac was trying to pay off that debt, putting out those albums so he could ultimately get off death row, start his own imprint, and go from there. But I think Pac was going to always end up on death row.
Okay, so let's keep that in mind within this what if situation. Pac and so the death row roster is Pac, D.O.C, the Dog Pound, Snoop Doggy Dogg. Is Snoop now? Maybe more of the question is Snoop on death row than Pac then in this situation?
I think as long as Dre is on death row, Snoop is going to be on death row.
The only reason I'm saying is because is he looking for enough? If D.O.C is already there and he's already pushing beats to him, is he even looking for a Snoop because he has D.O.C writing for him? But he's even looking for that, is what I'm saying. I know Warren G is his stepbrother and that dynamic going on there, but is that even in his eyes, in his ears? Because you got to remember, he's by himself. When he leaves death row, he is by himself. Not leave death row. When he left Ruthless, he's by himself. He has no other artists he's working with. D.O.C has just gotten to that car accident. There's nothing he has on the production side to be able to produce for.
Right.
Would he be even looking for a Snoop if D.O.C was there? Is my question.
I think so, because I think what happens is that Dre was so determined and so motivated because he was no longer with NWA. So he had a lot to prove, and it was real interesting because, like, you know, what was interesting about that time, and I mentioned this before in a podcast, like, we were used to people leaving groups in R&B. You ain't leave no group in rap, because rap was just now starting to make money in the 80s, and that wasn't even like big money. But I mean, yeah, you knew Diana Ross left the Supremes, you knew Lionel Richie left the Commodores, and so forth and so on. Harold Melvin left the Blue Notes, whoever, you know what I'm saying? That didn't happen in rap. So if you would have told me in 89 that Run was leaving the group, I'd have been like, nah, man, because Run DMC ain't Run DMC without Run.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think so. Dre really was what you would call betting on himself, and he did a great job. But I think Snoop ends up wherever Dre is. But I mean, man, if you think about it, D, if you got a label with the Dog Pound, Snoop Doggy Dogg, Dre, Tupac, and the D.O.C during the quote
Lady
unquote
of Rage, I'm saying Lady of Rage.
Yeah, during the quote unquote East Coast, West Coast. I mean, that's another soldier that you got. If you're Suge, you got another soldier right there.
You got Texas too with you. I mean, because D.O.C is very respected in Texas as well.
Well, that's where he's from. He's from Dallas.
Yeah, he's from Dallas.
He's from Dallas. Yeah. So you know, it's so if you got that kind of soldier in your camp, and again, you're stockpiling talent, because at this point you want to make sure that you have enough talent, and it's just like a football or
you Alabama in the 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Suge was like out there like Nick Saban. He's out there recruiting. So
yeah, well, it doesn't matter if it's 4 or 5 star running backs behind each other. We just roll them in.
It doesn't matter. So I mean, and you got the in-house producer at the time who's one of the best producers in hip hop, and still is one of the best producers in hip hop. So it was a win-win for Ruthless, or it would have been a win-win for Death Row. And then you had these up-and-coming rappers and stuff like that, like, you know, the Dog Pound and some of the other artists that they were going to have. So yeah, it would have been incredible, man. It would have been incredible to see if he had not had that accident. Like I said, I think the D.O.C, man, was definitely a star in the making.
Do we look at if D.O.C does not get into the car accident, do we look at D.O.C in 2025 as one of the best lyricists of all time?
I think he would have had enough body of work to be in consideration. He would have been in the discussion, because I think he would have had a discography that, you know, because you got to think D.O.C's got to be he at that particular time he was just coming up, so he's probably, so by now he would have been he's probably in his mid 50s now, where I can guess without looking it up. He would have had several albums, and you know, he got off to a great start with that first one. That Helter Skelter album, like I said, he was, I mean, but if he doesn't have that accent,
he's 56.
Okay, so yeah.
So he was 20 when that album dropped.
That's crazy.
No, I think 2021. Oh, think about it. NWA and Posse came out in 86. So that means he was like 16, 18, 17, 18.
Yeah, he was a teenager. Yeah, he was writing. And I mean, they were young too. I mean, like people don't. I tell people all the time, like we really have no, and it hits me a lot of times, particularly unfortunately when some of these rappers pass away, like because we had no point of reference. So like I don't know when Eric B and Rakim dropped Paid in Full. I don't know how old Rakim looked old, but I don't know how old he was. I mean, like Chuck D I think Chuck D might be 60 something, but Chuck
D got to be early 60s.
So, but Chuck D looked like mad young when Fight the Power came out, you know, and so I'm not looking at the TV screen.
He's 64.
Okay. And I think Ice-T is like 65. So I'm not looking at these guys as my contemporaries. They are, in my mind, they're way older than me.
67.
Wow. That's crazy. That's a blessing. And he don't look 67.
No, he does not.
You know, so it's, you know, being able to grow in hip hop. So I think ultimately, man, I think if the D.O.C. did not get into that car accident, he would have had a body of work. He would have had quite a few albums. It would have been up for discussion. It would have been because, you know, he would have had great production. And like I said, if he doesn't get into that accident, he moves around and he's doing other things. So maybe he's dabbling into acting. Maybe he's dabbling into business. He doesn't strike me as a guy who, and he seems like, if you hear him talk, he appears to sound like an MC that enjoys making music. And when you get one of those, if you got one of those, you got something special, because, you know, not everybody like making music and not everybody's a musician. So yeah, I think he would have been fine.
So my last question for you, there's rumors that there's a new D.O.C. album coming out with his original voice. And him rhyming, but changing it to his original voice.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a part of you that wants to really listen to this?
Listen, man, I'm such a fan. If you guys can't tell, I'm a listen, man. I heard about that. They said, you know, it's going to be AI enhanced or whatever.
Yeah, so it's going to take his original voice and put it over him rhyming.
I mean,
but will it have that? My question, will it have like that patois? Will it have that? That's that energy, you know, of it.
At the end of the day, it's still D.O.C.
Yes.
So I'm a fan. So it's still him rapping. Now would I want to go hear him in concert? Probably, because he probably couldn't duplicate that in concert. But I'm still listening, man. I at the very least, I mean, I don't buy albums anymore, but at the very least, I'm gonna listen. I'd listen just to hear what it sounded like. And, you know, it's interesting, man, because if you think about it, and, you know, a lot has been said about West Coast, and particularly West Coast hip hop now. You've seen what Kendrick has done this last year has been phenomenal. But if you listen close enough, you can hear the influence. If you listen to Kendrick, you can hear the influence of the D.O.C. You can hear the influence of pop.
100%. You're right.
You can hear the influence, because Kendrick is somebody who studied the ones that came before him. And I mean, not just Kendrick. I mean, I can hear that in Ab Soul. I can hear that in Schoolboy Q. I can hear that in Vince Staples. So the D.O.C., while he may have only had that one incredible album, I think his music and that particular album in that particular time, I think if you listen close enough, you can hear his influences. And that was, 30, almost 40 years ago.
Yeah, that's a ill way to look at it, man.
Yeah, man. And like I said, it's unfortunate, man, because what could that when you and I talked about this, when we talked about doing this podcast, that was one of the first things.
That was one of the first ones we said.
We're like, what if D.O.C. didn't have that accident, man? Because this is the biggest what if, man, because this guy was out of here for real. And I guess we should be mindful of the fact that he's very fortunate, because that car crash really could have killed him.
Yeah, like on the other side though, it's not like it was just a thing he tripped down some steps.
Right. Literally, yeah, he literally could have not been here. We could have been talking. We could have been saying rest in peace, D.O.C.
Like, what if D.O.C. wouldn't have died?
Right, exactly. So,
which we will have some other episodes about other MCs that have passed.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we've seen a lot in hip hop, man. But I think I'm glad that he's still here, and I'm still glad that he has that body working. Like I said, D, if that AI version of his album came out tomorrow, I'm listening. I'm tapped in.
Dang, well, man. Well, thank y'all for listening. Hip Hop What Ifs.
For sure.
What if D.O.C. didn't get to that car crash? Where can people hit you up and check out the different podcasts you have, man?
I've got 2 podcasts, the 12 Kyle podcast, and the Rap Soul podcast, the 12 Kyle podcast. We drop those episodes every Thursday and every Sunday at midnight, and the Rap Soul podcast every Monday. We may start dropping them on Fridays as well, but every Monday. The Rap Soul podcast is going to deal with music and artists from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. It is the best music podcast that you've never heard. So you need to go check it out.
Hey, look, he's right. I listen every Monday. I'm on it.
Appreciate it.
And make sure y'all, if you have some topics for us, we have like a docket of like 30 different topics.
Right.
But full disclosure, like we can never run out. But if you want to, email the hiphopwhatifs@gmail.com. Because you may have one of you like, right. I didn't think about that.
Right.
So we don't want to live in a tunnel with that. Email us there with that. Give us some ideas, and we appreciate all y'all for listening, man. And we'll be back with another one. We never gonna tell y'all what's gonna be the next one.
No, we just want you to come back.
We just pop up. We'll see you.
5